All right, so here are the series topics for the book, and I also these series topics are divided individually as well on the website as video lessons and also on the YouTube channel Regina Y Favors. The website being reginayfavors.com. So, series topics. What is the table? The table is essentially defining what type of table you are sitting at in your current season in life, right? So, if you, for example, if you've been wanting to get married and your partner says, "Well, let's live together and see," right? Um, and then you live together, and one year turns into 2 years, and 3 years, and then 5 years, and then you find out, or you discover one day that you're not married. That has been the table you have been sitting at for the time period, for that 5 year period. And if that's not the table that you want to continue sitting at, it may be time for you to leave, right? So, what is the table? You are defining, is this a friends with benefits table? Okay, if you are okay with that, then you are okay with that. But if you are not okay with that, then you have to make decisions at the table. This is also the type of table that if you set the right kind of standards, boundaries, and expectations at the beginning, you won't find yourself in certain predicaments that are not advantageous to you. So, what is the table is basically defining what the table is for you. And then, how do you prepare the table? Prepare the table is really speaks to 2 year transition planning. So, that's sort of like a concept that I came up with because that's where I struggled. And so, the 2 year transition planning is whatever goal you set, endure, and complete, um, set it up as a 2 year type of goal. So for instance, even if you have a 5 year plan, you can still chop it up into 2 year increments. The first 2 years of possibly planning or executing right, and then the third year just reassessing where you are and then where you want to go, and then the last 2 years would be okay. Now let's continue doing what we're doing, or we're going to shift to something else. So preparing the table is preparing for marriage, right? Preparing for a relationship, preparing your mind. But it really speaks to the 2 year transition planning. What is your financial table? So your financial table matters just as much as the any of the tables on this series topics list. But your financial table is what is your understanding of finances? Are you currently financially stable, or are there any issues with your finances? Do you have a fairly average credit score? Have you gone through evictions? um, uh, Anything that could hinder the growth of your relationship with your partner, potential partner, is something that you need to discuss. You can't be afraid to discuss it, and you have to develop a financial plan to resolve any of those issues that may be pressing in the relationship. So sitting at the table and discussing finances and who's going to pay what, and how much debt you have and how much credit cards you have and how much you spend, those are questions, those are types of types of discussions that you need to have at the financial table. What is your family table is essentially how were you nurtured? How were you reared? How were you, what was the guiding policy in your house? Were your parents authoritative in having teachable moments and granting autonomy and trusting you, and there's of course obedience, right? Or did you grow up in a very toxic, hostile environment where you were maybe the scapegoat? You were the black sheep and you were framed as a problem. Well, a lot of times, if you have grown up in that understanding and you don't take the time to heal before you get into a relationship, it's you are very likely to bring those types of understanding in your romantic relationship, especially in a marriage when you feel a lot more secure to sort of exercise chaos and toxicity, right? People put on a big face prior to the relationship. They They show you their representative, we're good, we're kind, or whatever. And then once you seal the deal and you are married, then you really kind of show who you truly are. I believe, though, you kind of show who you are much earlier. I just think you have to pay attention to the person, what the person is not saying. So the family table is going to sort of give you an idea about what to discuss at that particular type of table. Then your health table is essentially where you are in your health, and whether or not the person you want to marry or who wants to marry you is willing to take you where you are in your health. Also, if you have a genetic predisposition to maybe a certain type of disease or ailment or something like that, the question is, will that person truly love you in sickness and in health? As much as we want to quote the marriage vows, when we are confronted with the challenges and the temptations to leave, um, that's something that we need to think about and have foresight much earlier. There's this, I mentioned in one of the videos that there's somebody, I think it was a billionaire. His wife, I think, had contracted cancer or something like that, and he decided to leave her and go and be with somebody else because he didn't want to take care of her while she was going through her illness, right? Well, if they are the leaving kind, especially due to, finances or health issues or mental issues, that's something that you need to know very early at that table, because they had been together for many, many years. She got bad physically, health wise, and now he's leaving her and abandoning her. And so if they have this kind of abandoning spirit, that's something that you need to know. The health, the mental table. Then what happens if um, you lose your mind? What happens if you get Alzheimer's? What happens if you have a mental illness? What happens if you have a depression, major depressive episode? Does that person have the skills to be able to help you in that way? And not everyone is expected to know about major depressive episode and what to do with somebody who is severely depressed. However, all of us have experienced some form of depression, and so then you tap into your skill set. What did you learn from a previous situation? And then try to apply it. But to just automatically leave the relationship because someone is having a depression episode, that's something that you need to know. Can two walk together unless they agree? Table is just essentially being in agreement with each other. That if one person, I give this example, if one person does not want to have kids, but another person does want to have kids, and you know this at the beginning of the relationship, that means you are not in agreement. And therefore, someone in that relationship is going to have to make a decision to say, hey, we cannot go forward. I want to have kids. You don't want to have kids. You cannot force a person to. Um, you can't tell a person, okay, I'll agree with you. We won't have kids, and then you get into the marriage and you purposely get pregnant, or that person purposely gets you pregnant, and then say, okay, now the baby's here. Now we have to take care of it. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be offense. But if you discuss this at the table prior to engagement, prior to the marriage, you'll get a good understanding. What is your romance table? Romance table a lot of times is more about intimacy, less than about sex, but getting a good understanding about what is of sexual interest to a person is also, I mean, if there are certain sexual activities you do not like, that is something that you want to discuss at this type of table. Intimacy type table is really connected to what the person has done sexually as an individual versus what the person is expecting to do sexually as a marital partner, as one person of a marriage, right? If a person has spent so much time becoming intimate and becoming connected and soul tied to a porn site or to any other type of activity where they are so much more soul tied to that, it's going to be hard to transition that person from an individual thinking to a couple thinking, about intimacy within a marriage. So your romance table is really about intimacy. Your career, what is your career and education table, is about how important it is for you to understand that you are still 100% responsible as a adult individual, and it doesn't matter what people think individually about whether or not you should have education as a woman. And I make it specific to women because uh, there's this ongoing trend of men who want women to be traditional, uh, be more submissive. But we live in 2023 and women work. Women have businesses, women have property, women have independence. That doesn't mean that every woman is a feminist. That just means that that person is a grown adult and that person is carrying on herself as a grown adult. And I think a lot of times with relationships prior to marriage and after marriage, that men get this sense that the woman is a child and needs to be treated as a child. You can equally say the same thing about women, how they treat men, that they think that man is like a child and we have to treat him as a child. But we are both grown adults. Keep that in mind. We are both grown adults and we have to carry ourselves as grown adult people. What is your life assignment table? So it's essentially that's you discovering what your gifts and talents are and where they're actually going to be applied. And I make this point. Your life assignment, usually you are assigned to a person or place or people. And so, and I quote a particular minister, where you are matters just as much as what you are. Where you are in terms of the geography, the place matters just as much as what you are. And a lot of times we think that the gift and talent takes a priority, and it can, but you can have the right gift and talent and be in the wrong place and nothing works. So understanding your life assignment will actually begin with understanding or discovering your gifts and talents first, and then knowing exactly where you're supposed to place them. And then, is it time to leave the table? That's a question. That's a very hard question because you can ask that question at the beginning, right, or at the end. It can be while you're in the relationship, in the marriage, and you realize you should never have gotten married to this person. So, is it time to leave the table? You can be in a situation where your partner continues to have affairs and continues to cheat. Is it time to leave the table? You could be in a situation where your partner is physically abusive or verbally abusive or emotionally abusive. It's definitely time to leave the table. You have to set the time frame for that. So, is it time to leave the table? If just like I mentioned about the can two walk together unless they agree table? If one person wants a child and another person does not want a child, then it's time to leave the table. Because if you don't leave the table, you're going to find yourself manipulating the situation, and then now that moves into another type of relationship that no one wants. So these are your series topics that are covered in the workbook companion, and there are also individual video lessons titled the same way. And then there are some downloadable sheets on the website, reginawhitefavorites.com. And then there is a possibility that I will extend the series, but for right now, these are the series topics.